We just watched a video of Carmelo Anthony's mom. Her and her family went public with Carmelo this past weekend. And they wanted to publicly set the record straight about several things that were being publicly put out there about the family that were not true. And she was really breaking down because she is the mother of more than one child. Carmelo Anthony is one of her children, but she has other children also. And they have been receiving tons of death threats, not just aimed at Carmelo Anthony, but aimed at the entire family. Several of the death threats were detailing about what they would do to the other children and the mom and father of Carmelo Anthony. And she was upset and asking for people to not rush to judgment, to let the courts and police do their job. But there were so many lies being told about her and her family that she wanted to set the record straight. Lies about the GoFundMe page or whatever money was raised on another network site.
I think GoSendGo or something.
Right.
GiveSendGo.
And that CEO of that company recently came forward and admitted not a single penny has been given to the Carmelo Anthony's family. So they didn't use the money to post bond. They didn't use any of that money that was raised to buy a luxury vehicle that was being lied and said that they did. They did not use the money to buy a $900,000 house. That was a lie. They were still living in the same home that they've been leasing for the past 2 years. And the house is about $400,000, not $900,000. So all of the lies are being put out there by right wing groups and racist people in particular, trying to make it look as though the money that was raised was enabling the family to live a rich lifestyle, which was not the truth. The mother wanted to clarify those things. But I will say this, to those bigots and racists that are threatening the lives of other children who have nothing to do with this, threatening the lives of a mother and her family who were not involved in any of this, leave the family alone. Both sides, for Carmelo Anthony and against him, we should allow the system to do its job at this point. He's been charged. The judge has lowered the bond, which the judge, in my opinion, was right in doing. But at the end of the day, this case will be tried in a courtroom, and it won't be public opinion that determines the outcome in this case.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the bond issue at the end, and I will tell you I disagree. I think the standard murder bond in Collin County, Texas is $1 million, and that it was lowered inappropriately based on legal arguments that they lacked the money available to post the bond and other allegations that I think would have fallen on deaf ears in other courtrooms in Collin County. But I do agree, and although we haven't discussed it, I think the attacks on the African-American former prosecutor turned judge are completely unfair. We do have a more robust right to bond in Texas, but we do have a three-pronged analysis. We have the Dominique Alexander. I think we're going to hear from him in a little bit, but he was actually criticizing Frisco ISD for expelling Carmelo Anthony, as if expelling someone that murders someone else on campus isn't the appropriate thing to do. But those comments were made, and the comments by the mother were made at a press conference set up by the Anthony family seeking attention. Right? In fact, the father of Metcalf, who I believe you mentioned something about maybe having a criminal charge in the past or something, and there's been all these derogatory things said. He showed up. He showed up as the representative of his dead son. He was asked to leave, and then their representative chastised on the microphone the father for appearing. But what happened was he went somewhere he was legally allowed to be, but probably shouldn't have been. And then he was asked to leave, and he left. And he managed to do that without stabbing or murdering anybody. That was Metcalf's father. It sounds markedly similar to what happened between Metcalf and Anthony in the first place, which was he went somewhere that he could probably legally go, but he shouldn't have been.
Right.
Asked to leave.
It was raining.
Okay.
So he was trying to get out of the rain.
Well, there are people arguing.
And there was no rule or no law that he could not be under the tent. He was raining.
There are whispers that he was not even participating that day. I haven't seen it confirmed. I don't want to get into it. That's why he was not with his team. Obviously, he had gotten into a very violent incident 2 months before.
Obviously, or that's whispering also.
No, that's been reported.
Because
It's
there's
been
no
reported.
facts that he was suspended from school.
Right. Well,
There's no facts that he had been charged by law enforcement in a previous incident.
Well,
but the facts we do know is he sat under tent, and legally he was not breaking any laws by the school district or any legal law of Texas. We do know the father's behavior now. What was the purpose of Metcalf's father going to that press conference? To intimidate the Carmelo Anthony family? That sounds like the behavior of his son on that day when they tried to intimidate Carmelo Anthony to move from under that tent. That seems like bully behavior, going to that press conference to do what? Carmelo Anthony has been charged with the murder of your son. It's in the courts. The police are investigating. What was your motivation, sir, for going to that press conference?
Thank you.
Was it to intimidate?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, right? So you're spewing lies about a dead kid right now. There's no evidence of bullying by Austin Metcalf. There's no evidence that even Anthony's own story doesn't come across as bullying. He was asked to leave. He didn't want to leave. Now, whether or not, we don't know.
He was threatened to leave, not just asked. He was threatened.
That's the lie, right? There's no evidence that he threatened him. None at all. In fact, the evidence of all the eyewitness statements, even Anthony's statement doesn't mention a threat. It mentions
that's not true. Anthony's statement does indicate that he was threatened when he says to Mr. Metcalf, touch me and see. He wouldn't say touch me and see if Mr. Metcalf had not been threatening him first. And remember, why was it Mr. Metcalf's responsibility to move anybody on that day? That's not his job. So if he's not supposed to be there and he refused to move, go get a teacher. Go get an administrator.
We all wish that he did.
I wish both boards had done something different that day.
But no one imagined that you had a guy like Carmelo Anthony who was just looking for an excuse to murder someone.
Oh, come on, Charles.
But we've had all these stories about the Metcalf father being a bad guy because he went to a press conference. This was a whole show put on to try to convince the jury pool of Collin County that this kid was innocent. You talk about,
the majority of people in Collin County are white people. That's a white county. That's not a black county.
The mother's crying, right? On the same day of her tear jerk fest, crocodile tears, in my opinion. You had the Metcalf family got swatted, both the mother's house and the father's home. Police were called there under false pretenses and said there was something violent going on, seeking to cause actual violence to those families. Those families have had to endure 2 weeks.
And that's wrong. That's pathetically
activists,
wrong.
2 weeks of activists, in fact, you and other activists calling the Hunter and Austin Metcalf bullies, calling them racist, calling them all kind of crazy stuff. This is a dead kid and his twin brother with
has
no
had
support.
white activists also. He's had white activists calling Carmelo Anthony a scumbag, deserves life in prison, deserves to be executed, calling for white people to stand up and fight back against black people and black attacks. Even had a white activist to lead a White Lives Matter protest right there in Frisco, Texas.
And you're right.
So let's not pretend that it's just black activists. It's white activists too.
Do we have the clip of the dad of Hunter Metcalf's or Austin Metcalf's dad speaking to the white activist? Matt, can we play that?
This country is wrong. Why can't you stand that and say with that? Maybe you can. Would you be willing to stand by me in a press conference or in an individual interview and talk about this issue that is larger than Austin at this point? God rest the beautiful young man's soul that would have been one of our strongest voices if he was still alive today.
Are you done?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, my turn to speak. You are part of the problem, my friend. You're trying to create more race divide than bridging the gap. I do not condone anything you do. You do not have any.
That's called white guilt.
No, let it talk.
My son, let me finish. I give you your time. You take my son's face off your website. I am not associated with you.
You're creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness, sir. You are creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness.
You are being weak. I gotta be honest with you about that, sir.
You're being weak. Condemn your son's killer and the culture that caused it.
Hey, Jeff.
That's the problem. You've been submitted.
All right, that was Jeff Metcalf on the phone talking to, and I will agree, an absolute white race grifter, right? The mirror image of Dominique Alexander, who represents the family of Carmelo Anthony. Big key difference, right? Jeff Metcalf says take my son down, picture down. You're making it worse. The Metcalf family has condemned the white race grifters and told them to shut up and stop using their son's name and their son's image to promote their hateful grift. Whereas the Anthony family has swaddled themselves with this Dominique Alexander guy who has a criminal history so horrifying it would make anyone cringe, right? I can't imagine that your network would ever have anything to do, Quanell, with this Dominique Alexander guy. He like shook a baby and caused brain damage. It's crime after crime after crime, and he is using everything he can to condemn the Metcalf family. And that's the difference. The Metcalf family is rejecting the bigotry and the white racists, whereas the Anthony family raised a murderer. The grandmother put a picture of him out of jail with a bunch of hearts, and they're treating him like a hero.
What's wrong with a grandmother being happy that her son has been released from jail? Nothing wrong with that.
That's enabling.
Two, the activists involved in Mr. Alexander in the Frisco area, the Dallas County area, he has said some things that may be very well problematic for the family long term. But I would be wrong to say that because the man had a criminal history in the past, that God can't redeem him and clean him up and make him a productive citizen for his own community, for his own people. Hell, we sit here and we applauding and celebrating a man in the White House with 34 felony convictions. And so if we're letting the man be in the White House and millions of white folks applauding him, we supposed to take a young black man who's had a troubled past in the past and throw him away and say he's no good because he got some convictions on his record? Well, hell, he ain't got more than Donald Trump. So why should we just throw our brother away? If God wants to redeem that brother, clean him up and make him productive, let's give that brother the fast-shaking opportunity to do so the same way that millions of white people in America are giving for Donald Trump.
Well, there's a huge difference between crimes that were basically invented to prosecute Donald Trump.
What about the lawsuits that Mr. Trump lost? And the lawsuits where he's sexually assaulted women and abused women.
Again, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump, but there is a huge difference between everything he was accused of, right? Some paperwork issues and a 40-year-old or 30-year-old
And the lawsuit
claim,
also that he lost for $150 million.
But hold on. And shaking a baby so hard that you cause the baby brain damage and change the course of their life, and then commit assault and crime after crime. But that goes up until very recently with Dominique Alexander. But we have a clip of this genius, a race grifter hustler in Dallas. Do we have this clip where he's explaining why Anthony it was okay for Anthony to murder this unarmed poor Austin Metcalf, Matt?
Why didn't you cancel or postpone? With weather in that magnitude, you couldn't have a track meet in rain or thunderstorm or clouds. Y'all are the media. Ask your journalists, your weather journalists, how the weather was that day and that time. Y'all do that research. Frisco ISD has notified of their intent to expel Carmelo Anthony from school 1 month before his high school graduation. That just shows me that Frisco ISD is trying to push off the blame. How many of y'all?
Now there you go. Oh, so it's the school district's fault for having a track meet when there's drizzle rain. That's what caused the murder. It's the school district's fault for saying, "Hey, someone that brought a deadly weapon onto campus and killed someone, we're gonna expel him." It's the same when I mentioned the grandmother putting up the heart emoji, the loving, adoring picture up. It's about enabling and it's about pointing the finger of blame elsewhere instead of saying, "Hey, look, you can't stab someone in the heart because they asked you to leave somewhere, and even if they shoved you or punched you." It's all about enabling, and it's a problem with America. It's not a black problem or a white problem. It's an American problem.
Let me say this to Mr. Alexander. Dear brother, love your brother, and I pray that Allah will use you and resurrect whatever you were in the past, and you're not that today. But brother, your analogy of how Frisco ISD should have handled the situation is terrible. Because if you know anything about sporting events in Texas, they don't cancel because of rain, they don't cancel because of clouds, and they don't cancel because no matter how hard the rain is pouring down, they will delay, you understand, dear brother, and they will only cancel if there's consecutive lightning strikes and you cannot participate then. Now put that part to the side. Secondly, dear brother, it is a state of Texas policy in Texas, in school districts, that if a student is charged with a certain felony, that they are removed from the district pending the outcome of that case. So Frisco ISD did follow policy in that context of removing him from the district. Nothing they can do about that. That's just policy, period, in the state of Texas in school districts if you've been charged with a felony. So understand that in context, brother. But it doesn't help our brother to talk about Frisco ISD as bearing some of the blame for not ending the track meet. This had nothing to do with the weather. This was solely about Carmelo Anthony defending himself, which I believe that he did.
From what?
He was the victim of an assault.
From what?
He was first terroristically threatened.
How?
And he was the victim of an assault. And what people are not saying is Carmelo Anthony is 135 pounds at the max soaking wet. And Metcalf is 220 pounds.
Hold on.
Now you got two
Hold
twin brothers over 200-some pounds going up to a 130-pound little boy, threatening him to move. And that young man didn't start the confrontation.
Okay.
He didn't pursue a confrontation. And it's not a threat if you tell somebody, if you put your hands on me, what I'm going to
Actually, if you
do.
look at
That's self-defense.
If you look at the eyewitness testimony, that originally, I know you have this whole fiction where Austin Metcalf bullied and threatened him. No one has said any threats that came
That's
out of
not
Austin's
true.
mouth.
The
No
black
one. No
father
one.
who was there with his daughters, who witnessed the entire incident and who didn't want to go
What did he
public.
say? What
He
did he
didn't
say?
want to go public.
What did he say?
But I wish we had his video.
Okay.
He spoke about it from beginning to end, what he saw and what he witnessed. And he was the first one to say to the public, it was raining so hard. That's why the young man probably went under the tent. It was him that first put that out there.
Okay.
He was there with his daughters. But he admit that Carmelo Anthony wasn't harassing anybody, wasn't trying to intimidate anybody. He witnessed the brothers go over there to him. He witnessed the argument. And so he said that Carmelo was not the aggressor.
What is it that Austin is alleged to have said that was a threat?
Terroristically threatened the young man about if he
But what?
did not
No.
move.
What
1 second.
specifically?
Trying to force him to make him move. And he did not have to
Again,
move.
what specifically did Austin say?
Now let's talk about what he did. He put his hands on it.
Okay.
You can't do that, Charles.
Oh, okay.
Charles, you got a
is
right
here-
to self-defense.
So, okay.
If somebody make a threat, then
So,
put their hands on you
okay.
in aggressive
So
manner.
you
That's
want-
felonious
you wanted
assault.
America.
He was assaulted.
How is it a felony?
And I didn't say that. I said felonious assault.
How is it a felony?
They put their hands on him, Charles. That young man, Mr. Metcalf did. He put his hands on him. Both of them threatened him and tried to intimidate him. But that little boy's 130 pounds. The Metcalf's over 220 pounds.
Hold on. There is no one saying, including Carmelo Anthony, that he was threatened with physical violence. There is no one saying that.
That is
there
not
is
true.
no one saying,
Carmelo
hold on,
Anthony
I let
told
you
him,
talk.
put your
I
hands
let you
on me
talk.
and watch what happens.
There is no one saying, yeah, that's what Anthony said. There is no one saying that that was there, including Carmelo Anthony, that Austin Metcalf punched him. There is no one saying that Hunter Metcalf, anyone there, any of the eyewitnesses have given actual statements.
Not
publicly.
according to
There
that
is
father
no
who
one-
was right
yeah,
there.
This make-believe
he gave a
father.
statement too. He gave one too.
Well, it ain't been released.
The next day,
Okay.
he gave
Oh,
a statement
the
too.
next day.
He did.
Okay.
And he was there with his daughters, and they confirmed
Okay.
that he was there with his daughters.
So
as he had video showing that he was there.
There is no evidence that Hunter Metcalf did anything wrong, and yet y'all sit here on TV, right, and condemn him over and over again. You personally have called them both racist. There's no evidence that they have
I didn't
said-
say both was
Okay.
racist.
Do you think they're racist?
This is what I believe. They're bullies. I believe he was a
Why-
bully.
why?
Because you trying to make a kid move
Okay.
that did not legally have the right to move.
Okay.
He was legally
If
sitting
a-
there
if a
fine.
kid
He wasn't
went-
bothering nobody.
if a
And who in the
kid
hell
on
are
the
you?
other
Who in
team-
the hell are you as a young
He's a
man
kid on
to
that
tell
team.
another kid what you can and cannot
And
say?
if a kid came and sat down
And
in
you-
your
and you,
dugout,
Charles, you can't put
Anthony's
your
a
hands on
murderer,
that kid
and
move
everyone
him.
excusing it is disgusting.
Why
And
are
the
you excusing
suggestion-
the young man assaulting Carmelo?
I'm not. But you
So
know
he
what
committed
you
a
can't
crime.
do? But what you can't
Did
do
he commit a
is you
crime?
can't
Put his hands on
stab
him.
someone to death
Did
for shoving
Metcalf
you.
commit a crime? Put
Because
his hands
if you
on him.
can stab someone to death for shoving you or
Charles,
punching you,
had he
there'll
not-
be a lot
had he
more
not
people
put his
getting
hands
killed in
on that
America.
kid,
And it's not
had
going to
he
be
not
white,
put his
straight-A
hands
students.
on that kid, Charles, when we were sitting here having this
Well,
conversation.
we wouldn't have a murder, I guess. And that's Anthony was there looking for an excuse to murder.
And one thing we've learned in America, white folks call justifiable homicide all the time when black men do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's a polarizing case, but if you take everything that is being said by Carmelo Anthony as true, he still doesn't have the right to use deadly force to kill Austin Metcalf in the state of Texas. If you think everything the liars are saying, the punch, the racism, the bullying, as true, you still don't have a right to stab this kid to death in Texas.
I really wish that this case had never happened, but we must teach our children that you cannot put your hands on anybody because you disagree with them. Our children have a right to self-defense in this country like other people's children do also. I just want to see the double standard no longer exists. Treat us the same way that you treated historically others who do the same thing.